Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
Who decides what is taught in schools? How much science, which arts program, how many languages and which ones? How many hours of sport, and what about religious studies or IT? When it comes to designing the perfect school curriculum, the jury is still out. And this is true even when governments set a fixed standard curriculum to be taught in all schools across the country. Exactly what should be on the program, we look at how this is being debated in England.
Cambridge is a city synonymous with learning. It's home to one of the top 5 ranking universities in the world. However, PISA rankings show England is lagging behind in school-age education. The government is revamping the national curriculum, but the overhaul is causing concern in the classroom. The new curriculum, to be implemented by autumn 2014, puts the emphasis on rote learning. Critics from the academic world fear teachers will end up simply cramming kids with facts.
So the more serious problem with this idea of knowledge that's embedded in the curriculum ideas is that knowledge is seen as passive, as if you can kind of fill children up with terms and with ideas, rather than being active and concrete and experiential, which is really how we know knowledge is acquired these days. Certainly knowledge with understanding and some depth and some idea of being excited by knowledge.
Under the reforms, which affect only England and not the rest of the UK, calculators are discouraged until the last years of primary education. Children must have studied 2 Shakespeare plays by the age of 14. Tim Oates, an education expert who helped write the curriculum, fears it's been misunderstood.
We need to have a balance, for example, between the cognitive development of children, what they know, understand and can do, and the affective development of children, their well-being, their behaviour, their social integration. Now, some schools of thought say we ought to, honour one above the other, push one much harder than the other. Well, that is a false debate. The best countries around the world ensure a balance between the two things. Well, we've ensured the same thing in this curriculum review.
Head teacher Tricia Kelleher runs one of the top schools in England. She believes former Education Secretary Michael Gove, who pushed through the overhaul, got it wrong.
I've never experienced a time where I felt that education is such a political football between the different parties. I've never experienced a time when the professional opinion of teachers has been so ignored, or a Secretary of State who has so single-mindedly pushed through reforms that he believes are right.
So, can the new national curriculum deliver high standards as well as creativity? The government certainly thinks so, but that job falls on the teachers, who've had little say in the matter.
Obviously, getting the curriculum right is massively important, but deciding what should be included is difficult. So, for an expert point of view, we talked to 2 experts from UNESCO in Geneva, Switzerland.
The International Bureau of Education in Geneva is where school programmes and curricula for countries around the world are developed. It gives strategic advice and technical support to the countries trying to innovate their national curriculum. The IBE has collected school books from all over the world for almost a century. But the focus is not exclusively on the past. It's very much concerned with the present and future education models.
At IB, we don't talk about an ideal curricula. We talk that different curricula can be effective in different contexts, according to the national priorities, to the national aspirations, to the national definition of education. The curricula have to connect the content, what you want to teach, with the learner's needs and motivation. And that implies rethinking contents that are much more attentive to learners' needs and expectations. Traditionally, when we talk about curricula, we talk about teachers. And we don't talk much about the learners in the center stage. Today, when we talk about education and curricula reforms and processes, we are talking that the learner has to take the center stage in the educational process.
The educational process aims to help pupils understand what they're learning so they can apply it in later life. According to one IBE expert, to reform a curriculum today, you should look beyond borders because we live in an increasingly globalized world. But context is all important.
We take into account world trends and international studies. We compare ourselves to other countries, which is sometimes a bit too simplistic because we tend to forget to take into account the context. In recent years, Finland has always been quoted as having a very efficient education system, always scoring top in the PISA studies. But you have to take into account the context in Finland. If you transfer the Finnish system to Italy, you can't be sure it would work. Perhaps it wouldn't.
For many years now, education policymakers worldwide have been looking to other countries for inspiration on improving their own national curricula. But the ideal one-size-fits-all system remains as elusive as ever.
So perhaps giving teachers and students more freedom to design their own school curricula gets better results. After all, not all schools are the same. But what does this mean in practice? We have a look at how one school in Italy decided to do things and how other schools have followed its lead.
In the south of Italy, a pioneering secondary school in Brindisi has started a project to revolutionise the school curriculum. As soon as you enter a classroom in the Institute Ettore Majorana, you can see this education environment is like no other. For one thing, the students flow freely around the room in wheeled seats. This allows them to circulate among different work groups. The school is also testing a new timetable in which a subject is studied over a concentrated period rather than spread over the year.
So this is a book we've made. It's unusual because it's interactive, as we can also insert pictures, multimedia files. They can be published on our platforms or on those of the school.
Since 2009, the Majorana Institute has rejected the traditional national curriculum model designed for all students. The teachers and pupils write and produce their own low-cost books. In the beginning, they made only paper books at the school's own printing centre. Now they also have e-books. Some of the money saved has been invested in high-tech equipment such as computers, tablets and smart blackboards.
So the project Book in Progress was born, in which content is produced directly by the teachers with the help and the participation of the students. In 4 years, it's developed into a network of 200 schools and more than 1,200 teachers who create the content in a collaborative way.
From the south to the north, the Book in Progress network is extending its reach. Teachers at this primary school in Turin have been exchanging ideas through Skype with one of their counterparts at Majorana. Having started as a high school project, work is well underway to develop the network in primary and middle schools across Italy.
Sì, a me è già arrivata ieri una mail. Quindi non abbiamo ancora avuto il modo di vederci e di confrontarci.
We are divided into departments. These departments discuss in depth any ideas, any possible new analyses or changes to be made on the various books.
The success of the Book in Progress network has been possible thanks to the sweeping autonomy gained by schools after the approval of a law at the end of the 90s. Today, there are only national guidelines set by teams of teachers and experts within which schools create and develop their education programmes. The system has replaced a rigid, state-controlled national curriculum established during the Mussolini era.
In Italy, the traditional school curriculum doesn't exist anymore. We could say that at the beginning of 2000, we had the first real revolution since 1923.
Vera dal, diciamo, 1923.
For more on this topic, you can of course visit our social media pages, and why not share your ideas with us? We always love hearing from you. Well, that's all for this week. Goodbye.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.